Welcome back to the latest episode of the CGA Tour podcast. As always, here I'm your host, Calvin Glen Alexander, and tonight, I'm joined again by Jay. We talk a little bit Oklahoma State basketball, OU basketball, but more importantly, we're going to start out with some college football here, talk the top four, and also Big 12 championship, and then rank the OU and OSU quarterbacks as they presumably head into their next phase of their careers. We'll see. Dillon Gabriel could come back, right? He's a redshirt.
Yeah, technically, but with Levy being gone, I don't see him staying.
Yeah. No, I'm with you there for sure. And I think Bowman can ask for a waiver at least, but I don't think it'll be great. I mean, who knows? Who knows now? COVID, you get one extra year for just hanging around and being in school during those times, but. Then again, Leon Johnson hopefully will apply for a waiver as well too. Oklahoma State back wide receiver who I didn't think he'd get the standing playing time this year, but of course due to injuries he did. But with all that being said, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and kick it off here. We got college football playoff rankings. They're going to come out tomorrow on Tuesday, November 28th. But for right now, it's fun to speculate. We just saw Michigan beat Ohio State. That answers a few questions. And then, of course, we got, Big 12 championship, Big 10 championship, Pac-12 championship, ACC, etc. this weekend. But I think the only real change that we could see after this week, unless some upsets happen, is it's Pac-12 change. But who do you think is the top four right now?
I think the college football standings are correct. I think the undefeated teams are, your top four. With Georgia, Michigan, Washington, and Florida State. They're undefeated for a reason. Yeah, there's been close games for each of them, but that doesn't mean that. You don't go undefeated for no reason.
Yeah, the one big question I'm going to have is around Florida State versus, kind of who's that fourth spot, right? Like, Florida State, they're undefeated. They've got Louisville this weekend. You'd figure, okay, they win. They're 13-0. It'd be easy, but they're all-star quarterback. I'm blanking on his name. Was it Travis? Not Travis Hunter, is it?
No, that's Colorado.
The Colorado dual threat guy.
Jordan. It's something Jordan.
Yeah.
But he had that nasty leg injury.
Yeah, it just took him out. Yeah, that was brutal to watch. I can't think that that shouldn't mean in my mind that he's out for good. But then again, like he was injured and. Is that going to change anything? Like, is the college football power to be just going to go, hey, you know what? Like, you're out. See ya. That's it. Basically because we don't think you can play up to the level of competition that's around you,
Right. Right. I understand. If everybody wins out, the only team that you would ever even put in would be Texas over them because you wouldn't put Alabama in because then at that point you're saying, middle of the season doesn't matter, or your one loss during the season doesn't matter, and they won't do that. They're too worried about what people think on how they see who gets into the playoffs. And I think that's why they're moving into a 12 team playoff system instead of a top four, because we have seasons like this where you have a whole bunch of one loss teams that look really, really good on paper.
Yeah, and it's by the way, the Florida State guy is Jordan Travis. So I think you had it at one point, but playoff chances wise, you're really just going to go all undefeated unless something crazy happens. But kind of getting at that, I don't see Georgia losing to Alabama. Alabama needed every second of their game in the Iron Bowl to win. So I don't think that they're that much better than, if they're not that much better than Auburn, then they're definitely not going to beat Georgia.
Well, here's the thing. Auburn is just like OU and OSU. Auburn and Alabama is just like OU and OSU. I'm not saying OU's Alabama or OU's Auburn. I'm saying no matter what, during the Iron Bowl, anything can happen. The kick six a few years ago, who would have thought, going to overtime, let's see if we can't make it. And he runs it back 120 yards. Anything can happen in the Iron Bowl. And the Saturday proved it again. A 4th and 27 and 4th and goal from the 27, and you throw it perfectly to the back corner and he catches it. I'm just saying anything can happen in a rivalry game.
Very, very true. But let's say Georgia wins, Michigan wins, Washington wins, Florida State wins, and Texas wins.
Yeah.
The odd man out has got to be Texas. They're the only one with a loss.
I do not see them getting in over a undefeated team. I would just be saying like, yeah, you want undefeated, so, but we think this team's better, and I just don't see them doing that. They haven't done it in like past years. So,
well, let me ask you this: what if Washington loses to Oregon, neutral site, and then both teams are 11-1, and then you've also got Texas sitting there at, or one team's 12, one team is 12,
yeah, 12, yeah, so be.
But
yeah, so that's a good question. Which side would you take? Is the Oregon 12-1 better than the Texas 12-1? I mean, right now in the standings, I believe Oregon's higher than Texas. So, in all honesty, they would probably put Oregon in just by this week's.
Yeah, I mean, they're not gonna. I mean, I can be an Oklahoma State homer all I want to be, but I know that Oklahoma State is not on the same level as Washington. Competitive wise, and also I know what's going to be a great win versus not. Losing by 3, a neutral field. He's losing by 3 to Washington at Washington. It's just going to be way different than Oregon actually going out there trying to put us style points and win. I guess that's the biggest question. It's like if Florida State loses, they'll be 12-1. They, I think, would easily get knocked out, and you'd see Texas in. I think that would be thank goodness Florida State lost from a lot of people. All of a sudden, Texas would jump them then, because Texas would also then be 12-1, and their only loss being to OU. All right, you know what? OU's going to finish third in the Big 12 overall.
Yeah, and
so that I don't think I'd feel bad about at all. As a voter, a college football playoff decider, and then if Washington ends up being 12-1 and Oregon ends up also being 12-1, who do you put in? Do you put in Texas or do you put in Oregon at that point? And that's where I think Oregon would have the advantage, especially for Bo Nix's Heisman candidacy too.
Yeah. And then you also have to think, I think Ohio State and Michigan replay each other, correct? Or is it Iowa?
Yeah, that's the weird deal. Is like, if Oklahoma State had lost this weekend, they would definitely be out. But if Texas had lost this weekend, then there was an option that Oklahoma State could have won and still not been in. I believe. Actually, I think no matter what, if Oklahoma State won, they were in. But also, you could have seen K-State be in. If OU lost, there's just so many different scenarios because not everyone plays each other, and you don't have divisions. But Iowa, Michigan,
yeah,
I'm choosing Michigan by 90. But I don't trust Iowa at all to do anything. But
score 3 points and play defense. That's about it. That's all you can.
Harbaugh will be back. They'll be killed.
I'll just be if we do have a Washington or a Florida State loss, do you look at Ohio State being back in after losing to Michigan by 4 points? That's something else you got to look into too. Because you have all these good teams. I'm glad they're bringing that 12 game system for the playoffs here soon.
Me too.
Because if you look at this, you have so many variables. What if this? What if that? So how do you determine who gets in a 4-team playoff?
Yeah, because I don't see a way that Florida State would be in if they lose. I just think that would be everyone from the College Football Playoff Committee would be like, oh, thank goodness, because they just don't want to see this Florida State team with a. Listen, they're really good, but it's going to be a backup quarterback. That's just it is what's going to be. So I don't think they're looking at anyone besides that. And then when you've got Georgia, Michigan, I think those two, no matter what, we can just say slam dunks. I'm picking those two regardless. But what are these matchups here do you think is the most likely for an upset, except for Oregon, Washington, just because that's such a slim, that one's truly a toss-up in my mind. But of the other 4 games, who do you think is most likely to get, to upset?
The upset? You may say Georgia's a slam. I think Alabama has the biggest chance that, they're Alabama. They, have an amazing coach. As much as I don't like Alabama, Nick Saban is one of the best coaches of all time, if not the greatest coach of college football history.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I just think it's more likely that Louisville would
Okay.
beat Florida State than Alabama beating Georgia. And I'm really just going off of just like purely the vibe or the momentum of the team. And that's basically because Alabama just played so closely to Auburn. Now, I'm really eating crow here a little bit because Louisville played so close in their last game, too. They only won there by a touchdown, and it was, they lost to Kentucky this past weekend, right? So they got 2 losses, and, if I'm going off the previous game, like, Louisville just lost it. But Louisville still has their starting quarterback is what I keep going back to. And, like, I just think that Florida State, somebody could figure something out against Florida State. Florida State beat Florida this past weekend, which surprised me. I didn't think that would happen that easily, at least, but sure enough, it did. Shout out to Florida State getting it done, but are they going to be able to do it like 2 weeks in a row?
I don't know. I don't think one player makes a number 4 team, but a good quarterback does make a team better. So I understand why everybody's like, well, do they deserve to be number 4 after losing their, Heisman candidate quarterback?
Kentucky's 7-5. So they're 7-5 right now after winning that game against Louisville,
which is a huge turnaround from 2 or 3 years ago. Who are now under, I think, Stoops' brother.
Yeah,
Mike Stoops
or Mike.
Is it? I think it's Mike Stoops.
Okay.
And he's actually got into bowl eligible Kentucky, which Kentucky's only known for basketball.
Yeah. I mean, they're known for Coach Cal. That's it. But and Kentucky's played some tough games this year, but they're not. They're 7 wins. Like looking through it, like they beat Ball State, Eastern Kentucky, Akron, Vandy. And then Florida they beat as well. So maybe Florida's just horrible. I just am very curious to see like how this Louisville game will play out. How good Louisville be, and I'd pick Louisville to beat Florida State over, basically over the other option because Louisville at the end of the day, just like Oklahoma State, just like Alabama could be playing for a comfortable playoff chance, but Oklahoma State and Louisville, if they win, there's no way they're making it in the top 4. Right, that's just out of the question. So they're playing for New Year's Six Bowl, which is an awesome deal and a lot of fun as well. So I will say, as an Oklahoma State fan, I'm worried. If we win the Big 12 and all of a sudden we're in the Sugar Bowl and we have to play like Alabama or Georgia, that's
gonna be a little tough.
That would probably be a bad look. But hey, if we beat Texas, anything's possible. I didn't think we'd beat OU. So the entire week, if you'd asked me, and I think I did a podcast too about it, will we beat OU or not? And I was like, nah, we're not beating OU. And then sure enough, we pulled that one out somehow.
Yeah, I was there, unfortunately, in a sea of orange with the only OU gear on for miles.
Well,
and
goes to show you. I guess I don't know what else. If I found you afterwards, I would have bought you a beer then because I would have felt bad for you. But also you probably would have hightailed it out just like every other.
Oh yeah, fan. No, I was out as soon as I got to my aunt's house. I was gone. I was heading home. It was a very quiet car ride home. Yeah.
No, I would, and that I would think after Bedlam as well. Well, besides bringing up a bunch of old stories here, do you give a chance for Oklahoma State to beat Texas? Because you're more of the non-bias. I mean, I know all my biases. I got an orange OSU clock above me that's lit up. So, what percent chance, if any, do you give OSU to upset Texas? Is there a 5%, 10%?
It was 33, like a good 30%. Like, if they play how they played against BYU the first half, no chance.
Yeah.
If they play like they did in the second half, there is a chance. Their defense stepped up. The offensive coordinator drew up some great schemes. I mean, second half OSU versus the first half of BYU had me excited. I thought, I might buy me a ticket to Arlington. And here comes Mike Gundy and his crew second half to show, they wanted it more. So,
yeah. Well,
took 2 overtimes, but hey, anything happens in Big 12.
That was a heart attack. I've gone to 2 OSU games in person this year and been in Stillwater for 3 games. And OSU's won every single one of them. It was K-State, Bedlam, and then this one. And I take that K-State win, at least my heart would, a lot more than this BYU game, because there were several times where during the game I was just going, oh yeah, I know this will be fun. And this is the first time I take my girlfriend to a game, and I was like, okay, you know what? Like BYU, like, yeah, unfortunately I think the weather won't be the best, but you know what? Like it's BYU. Like we'll win.
Right.
Like we were, I think 16.5-point favorites at one, is one poll I saw. So if that was really the line and we only won by 6, like my bet the OSU money line, but do not bet the OSU to cover the spread. Like that's got to be the classic deal. And that was the most nervous I've been watching a game in quite some time. The biggest thing is, and this is just kind of making fun of like OSU and just kind of the weather in general, because who would have known? But Alex Hale kicks the extra point after touchdown that he misses.
Mm-hmm.
And I gotta say, if I'm him, I'm like, there was a dense amount of fog I could barely see in front of me because it was raining nonstop. After Oklahoma State scores, they put out fireworks. The fireworks smoke did not help Alex Hale see. Now, of course, like, I think if you're a college football PAT kicker, you're probably like, you know what? Either way, you got to make it. And I think BYU's, and I think BYU actually blocked it. So props to them. But
I think it was a bad snap because I was rewatching it. I think it was a bad snap and hold, and I don't really think it was his fault more than less. So like when they blocked it, and they were only up by 3, I said BYU is going to have to draw some up, and sure enough, they got in field goal position and gave themselves a chance to win. Their defense played good,
Yeah.
But if you're an offense and you give out multiple 3 and outs, your defense is going to give up scores. And that's just part of the game. As an offensive coordinator, you've got to dial up something and give your defense a break.
You really do. I mean, BYU
I think that's what happened. I think that's what happened in the first quarter. I think OSU had too many 3 and outs, too many surprises against them. On defense, kind of left them a little confused, but they regrouped. I gotta give it to OSU. As much as I wish we were heading to Arlington, I gotta give it to OSU. They came back and won the game.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Yeah, I mean, we need it. We need every possible thing and momentum we can get, because in Arlington, I'm going to give us a 15% chance of beating Texas and upsetting them, mainly because the only reason why it's that high is just because we pulled out some weird things so far this season. I mean, that's the only thing I can look to. This, and also the game's indoors. We know in the rain, we are not built for it at all. UCF, BYU, we can be however many point favorites, but if we're double-digit point favorites and it rains, it's almost a lot. I mean, like, we've only lost one of the 2, but did it rain against South Alabama? Because I want to say in retrospect it did. It just proves the point a little bit further.
Yeah.
Well, also talking about college football playoffs here, what do you, in college football in general, who do you think is the lead right now for the Heisman in your eyes? Like, is it a solidified, hey, this guy for sure, or you think it's still pretty much up in the air? What are you thinking here?
I think with Washington winning this week, I think Penix wins it. I do. I would love to see Marvin Harrison Jr. win it, but I think after last week's performance, I think the stock just dropped a little bit. I don't even think it's his fault for his performance. I think I think Michigan's defense is just top tier, like a amazing defense, and it's hard. He had a few breakout catches. He showed his Heisman moment. They had a chance, and the quarterback just kind of threw. He's down there somewhere. Just kind of throw it.
He's over that way.
Yeah, but I think Penix, if with the win this weekend.
What happens if Bo Nix wins? Is it all of a sudden Bo Nix, or is it maybe Jaden Daniels or Marvin Harrison Jr.? I don't think Michael Penix Jr. is going to win the Heisman if he loses this weekend.
Right.
But I
think it'll be a Bo Nix.
Yeah.
I think they look at record. I don't think LSU's quarterback, he showed out during games they were supposed to win by a lot. And then games that they weren't supposed to win by a lot, and the ones they lost, he did not perform. So
yeah, I can't get past Bo Nix. The hardest thing for me about Bo Nix is that he had such a spotlight on him at Auburn that, like, I've seen so much just game film of him playing badly and not playing well. And that, I think, hurts his candidacy more than anything else. It's like there's so much previous history. And Penix, I know, was at Indiana. I know he transferred as well. He transferred from, being in a different conference to the Pac-12 to be up in the northwest area of the country. But Michael Penix Jr. was in Indiana. I don't remember it at all. Whereas like Bo Nix, he played against Oregon. He played against Justin Herbert, to open up his career. So I remember that one pretty vividly. And as much as I like Oregon and like the Ducks, Bo Nix, I would say personally, like Jane Daniels is setting records. That's the one thing that could help him out a lot, is he could have that Lamar Jackson type of Louisville kind of road and path here where there's not necessarily a clear guy, but there is a clear guy that's setting records. And if Bo Nix has not the greatest game, Penix Jr. and Washington don't win, but Oregon does, and Bo Nix doesn't put up a ton of stats, I could see it leaning a little bit Jane Daniels in that point, just because if we're going to see Martin Harrison Jr. this weekend, then maybe I'd be singing a whole different story too. I just, and I feel bad for the Florida State quarterback, Jordan Travis, because he was in this up until the end. He was in this, but can't be injured during the final 3 games, possibly the final 3 biggest games of your season. Right. It's just tough. So
it's just tough. I agree.
All right. Well, the other thing here is I wanted to go through the Oklahoma State and OU quarterback rankings of historic presence. And the reason why is that I was talking with my dad for couple minutes over Thanksgiving break. We talked about before too, that if Spencer Sanders wins the 2021 Big 12 championship for Oklahoma State, where does he rank all time? Is he better than Mason Rudolph? Is he better? How does it stack up? And in my mind, if he wins Big 12 championship for Oklahoma State, that's only been done once before. Again, Big 12 has not been around for forever, but it's only been done once before. And all of a sudden, then he's, it's Brandon Whedon and then Spencer Sanders in my eyes, right? Like you do so much, you win the Fiesta Bowl, et cetera. You're right there. And heck, if OSU had beaten Baylor, maybe they're in a college football playoffs. We're seeing a whole different story too. It could have happened. Not 100%, but it could have happened. So with that being said, both OU and OSU right now have quarterbacks that are probably leaving their schools after the end of this year. So he's touched on to start the podcast. So from the OU side of it here, where does Dillon Gabriel rank in your eyes? Like all-time OU quarterbacks, but really I'm just going to go off the previous past 23 years since 2000, just to make it a little bit easier to kind of comprehend, because my football knowledge doesn't go back before 2000. To be honest, I was 7 then, so it's
I was 1 year old, so I don't remember the Josh Heupel, the Jason White that my dad talks about. So I grew up with the Sam Bradford, Landry Jones, Blake Bells, all of them. So I honestly, I have them kind of in the mid tier, I have my Heisman winners, and then I think Dillon's right under them. So, that 5, 6, kind of right in the middle out of the 13 that's there. Like, he's a great quarterback. I will not lie. He takes care of the ball these last 2 years. He's thrown beautiful games, has great QBRs every game. So, I think, if he was consistent this year and a Heisman candidate, I would have him higher. But just a few losses where he didn't look, he just reminded me of Landry Jones, could sling the ball and run the ball a few times when he needed to.
So is he in your eyes, no matter what, better than Spencer Rattler and better than Landry Jones? So he's somewhere above there.
Yeah, he's I would say kind of in between Sam Bradford and Landry Jones type person.
Okay, somewhere around there. So, where does Jalen Hurts rank in all this? Because he didn't win the Heisman, but yeah, I think he won.
Yeah. I like Sam Bradford, but he was hurt consistently. His first 2 years before his Heisman candidacy and his 2008 run, I think he was shaky. We had a lot of 9-3 years. I think 2 of them I had to remember, but I just think Jalen Hurts that 1 year showed something special under the Lincoln Riley system, and really gave OU a chance.
Yeah, I mean he went to the Heisman Trophy ceremony. Granted, didn't win it, but that alone is better than Gabriel will do. I don't think Gabriel's going to make it to the Heisman Trophy ceremony this year at all. And Gabriel's been shaken up a little bit here and there, right? He didn't start every single game last year. He had Davis Bevel start a game this year. He started a bunch of games, but what was it? was just, against BYU. He didn't play the entire game because he gets knocked out with the concussion issues too. So, and also, in all fairness, like, OU just lost a couple of games against KU and, of course, against OSU that I just didn't think they would. I think that if they, I don't think I'm speaking anything brand new news to you here. But, there's, like Gabriel also was not the guy who beat Texas in my eyes. Like, that was OU as a whole. Like, that was a huge team effort. That was a big stops there on the defensive side of this. This was not like a 60-65, win or something for OU where Gabriel's putting up just an incredible amount of touchdowns. So no, I agree there, but I think it's good to note. As far as Alan Bowman, there are a couple different quarterbacks for Oklahoma State that I could just kind of go off of. I think no matter what, though, I've got to rank him above J.W. Walsh and Clint Chelf. Because here's the thing. If I'm going off of what did you do for me? Well, Chelf had a 4 total touchdown game against number 3 Baylor at home, but they didn't make it to the Big 12 championship. Like, Chelf was on the team when they won, but he was not the guy that won it. And he finished pretty darn good, but like, man, Bowman might win all Big 12 honors. Like, I don't think he will because I think that'll be definitely Quinn Ewers and then Dillon Gabriel. But going into the season, there was not any talk at all of, hey, Alan Bowman. And so he's raised up above that. I can't put him above Josh Fields or Zach Robinson or Mason Rudolph or Brandon Wheaton. Like, I can't put him there. And he's only going to probably play one season for Oklahoma State. So to me, it's where do I put Taylor Cornelius? Like, where does Taylor Cornelius fit into this whole deal? Because if Corndog had played just one more year, who knows? I mean, that guy was a walk-on to Oklahoma State. He's a 5th year. Spent 4 years behind Mason Rudolph to get his time in. And then basically he starts because Spencer Sanders, wanted to preserve his redshirt year. So it's just really, really tough because, if Cornelius has a 2-point conversion go his way, then he beats OU in Bedlam. And of course I can say about a lot of OSU years, coulda, woulda, shoulda in Bedlam. But it's one of those things where I think I have him right around Taylor Cornelius. Like, and that to me, Cornelius also doesn't rank above J.W. Walsh and Chelf. So that's where it's really hard here, is because Bowman to me has not single-handedly won a game for OSU. He's played great in a lot of games, but like, this is going to be the Ollie Gordon year. This is not going to be the Alan Bowman year. And if Ollie Gordon comes back to OSU, which fingers crossed, no matter what he does, he could transfer. I'm aware of that. To all the Twitter trolls, I am aware. But I just, I have him somewhere in there. It's really hard to quantify just because it'll be 1 year. So yeah. I've got him right around, maybe just lumped in here with Chelf, JW, Cornelius, and then Alan Bowman. And Alan Bowman also, like, it does help you out your ranking a little bit in my head as an OSU homer that you're wearing Zach Robinson jerseys and you're also wearing Josh Fields jerseys after wins. I would say big wins, but BYU shouldn't have been a huge win, but it was. So it's kind of weird. If OSU had rushed the field after that BYU win, I would have been like, well, that's a tough. No one. But yeah, I'll always bet BYU. But BYU, like, double overtime, it's kind of because it was just a crazy game. It wasn't because, like, that would have been a rush in the field because, like, you played double overtime and ended up pulling it out in the rain. Like, that would not have been because you beat a great team because BYU's not going to a bowl game. I mean, it's the main thing. So, I've got to put him there.
Yeah, I did my research on Bowman. I was thinking about, like, would I rather OU face Bowman or J.W. Walsh? And I was like, well, thinking about it, I think I'd rather face, Bowman, like 100%. J.W. Walsh but I think we had the Mike Stoops era defense where he played really well that one Bedlam year where it was really close. I can't remember what year, but I think I'd rather have Bowman. So I was wondering where you would have him, and you have him kind of where I thought was kind of a lower tier quarterback for OSU.
Yeah, I did look up on like pistolsfiring.com, who did this whole rankings. Actually, they've done it a couple times before, which I didn't know about until recently. But basically, they ranked the top this past offseason, July 19th of 23. They ranked top 5 quarterbacks in Oklahoma State history, and it goes 1, Whedon, 2, Rudolph, 3, Zach Robinson, 4, Spencer Sanders, and 5, Mike Gundy, with honorable mentions of Josh Fields, Clint Shelf, J.W. Walsh, and then just kind of some what-ifs of Cornelius and Wes Lunt. So, the Wes Lunt is injury-related. The Cornelius is more, how many more years? To me, it's just like, okay, I don't know. Josh Fields won Bedlam twice. So, putting the guy who won Bedlam once, but also didn't play at Oklahoma State for more than 1 year, it's just tough putting him above Josh Fields. But I think, I don't think there's a way I can do that. But like Spencer Sanders, like I don't know where to rank him overall for Oklahoma State. I just really don't. There's so many different ways I think I could put this, but like I just don't see. Sanders is still in college. He's playing for Ole Miss, and if he had come back to Oklahoma State, gosh, who knows where he'd be right now. But it's a tough rankings for sure for Oklahoma State.
That's fair. That is fair.
Yeah, where does when you're talking about J.W. Walsh, Spencer Sanders, or Alan Bowman, of course, Sanders played in a lot of Bedlam games. He won one, almost won a Big 12 title, won a Fiesta Bowl. But where do you have where do you have Sanders here on that kind of?
I think number 2. I think Mason Rudolph is just by far. He was, that guy for OSU for the longest time. I think he, gave OU the most fits no matter what. Even if OSU didn't have a good team that year, Mason Rudolph has always been fantastic for OSU.
Yeah, I mean, he leads Oklahoma State in so many historic numbers. Where if I'm going off of wins, it's really hard to put of big time wins. Like Rudolph won a Bedlam, but it was off of the weirdest deal ever. Where it's. I would love to say it was him, but it was more just because Tyreek Hill is super fast and ran back 6, and then honestly Rudolph toughs it out and wins the game. But Rudolph also just has so many. I mean, he ranks tops in program history in passing yards, touchdowns, attempts, completions, pass efficiency, touchdowns responsible for, offensive yards, offense per game, offense per play. There's just so many things where Rudolph ranks number 1 or number 2 in all those categories. So now consecutive passes without an interception. There's just so many different things here. So that's what's crazy to me. And I have to go Whedon with number 1 just because he wins the Big 12, wins Bedlam. I mean, Brandon Whedon was a godsend because he does play multiple years at Oklahoma State as well. And he does have incredible wide receivers and guys around him who play really well. But I'd be dumb not to also say that Rudolph didn't. Rudolph had back-to-back Blitnikoff Award winner James Washington on the team. So, how do you quantify the quarterback play? Bowman's doing a lot with what seems like a wide receiver, but who knows how these guys will go down in OSU history because there's so many injuries. These guys are getting insane amounts of options and opportunities that you just wouldn't if the guys in front of them hadn't been knocked out. But maybe some of these guys are, on a scale, maybe they're 0.5 better than the guy behind him, and the guy behind him just gets the opportunity. Yeah. So
I agree. I mean, I think the 3 Spencer, Whedon, and Rudolph, they could be interchangeable on just how what era of Mike Gundy you like. If that makes sense,
yeah,
I guess it'd be era of Big 12 during that time. You had the Lincoln Riley era where we scored a bunch of points. Then you had the Bob Stoops era where we were defensive minded. And now we have the Brent Venables era. I wouldn't know. I guess you guys would be more coordinators because you've had Mike Gundy for so long.
Yeah, that's truly how it would be. I think for us is just coordinators Casey Dunn, Sean Gleason, of course Dana Holgerson.
I guess it just depends on who you liked as a quarterback during that time.
Yeah.
And to me, I think Rudolph, he was there when Baker played. So I actually got to see Rudolph multiple times in person. So
and also Oklahoma State, I didn't even mention Todd Monken, great offensive coordinator for Oklahoma State too. And I wish they had mentioned it last night on Sunday Night Football broadcast because that would have been a great shot for Oklahoma State, but it would have been But a long list, you know. I mean, he was in there. He was with Oklahoma State 02 to 04, so he wasn't really with Gundy. He was just with, just with Les Miles. So tough a little bit there, but like, granted, he's he tutored Justin Blackman. So like, how am I not going to love Todd Monken? Anyways, that being said, also want to hit on this podcast here. Second part of it is men's basketball. College basketball is kicked off. It's tipped off, I guess, a better way to say it. And Oklahoma State is 500 overall right now. But granted, every team has played a lot of different opponents. I wish I could say Oklahoma State has played only really tough opponents. It's not really gone that way necessarily. But right now, you've got a bunch of undefeated teams in the Big 12, including OU, as well as Houston, Baylor, BYU, Cincinnati, and TCU. So, what are you thinking here with OU, OSU? Where do you think they finish the season in the Big 12 standings?
Well, OSU's had the trouble with the NCAA. That's really hurt the recruiting. They haven't won since Cade Cunningham. And I think it's been really tough for OSU basketball. I do think they'll be, in the bottom 4 teams. It could go either way. I'm just not seeing a lot. I mean, the games that I watch, I just don't see a lot of talent on the team. OU, I think they can finish in the mid-tier. They're started off hot. They beat a ranked opponent this past weekend, or Saturday, USC, who was ranked 22.
And they've got Bronny James, too. So we know that was a great win because you got to beat LeBron James' son.
Yeah. He was on the bench. He still has that heart problem, hasn't been cleared, so I don't think he's getting to play. Poser, OU's coach, was the coach for Loyola Chicago a few years ago when they made that deep 2016 run to the Final Four, got beat by Jordan Poole in Michigan. So I think on a buzzer beater. So I've been excited for Poser to get his some recruiting here, and it's really showing off this past 6 games. So I really think they'll finish, mid-tier, maybe, probably behind, your undefeated guys and Kansas. Kansas got beat by a good Kentucky team. You can't. They, 17-year coach who's, they were ranked number, 1 coming into the season, got beat by number 17 Kentucky. Houston's ranked 6 right now. Houston's going to be good. So I just don't see OU beating Baylor, Kansas, and Houston. It's going to be really tough for them. So I can see the mid-tier for them.
Yeah, for Oklahoma State, one, we're going Big 12 football playoff or, football championship. So I don't think a lot of attention's been paid to basketball so far. But for anyone keeping track at home, Oklahoma State is 2-1 at home. 3-1 at home. And both games played in Brooklyn, part of the Brooklyn kind of series, were lost. Actually, weirdly enough, by the exact same score. Just one was in overtime, one was in regulation. But by 66-64 in both those games. And they played St. Bonaventure, Notre Dame, which this Oklahoma State team, if I had to like put together like Boyden and encapsulate him into like kind of a paragraph, it would be so much murky off seasons that when the season starts and tips off, you're just trying to put it all together. And that's what it seemed like for basically every single year Boynton's been with OSU. The Cade Cunningham year was like, will they get suspended or will they not? Will they will they have it for this year? They can't go to March Madness or they can't. And what are the actual NCAA penalties are coming down? Are they going to be stringent? Are they not? What's going to happen? That's affected a lot of things. Then you just kind of fast forward down the line. This year, for Oklahoma State, I barely know anyone on the roster. And I can't remember the last time I was like saying that actually continuously. I mean, I know a couple of guys. I know we got John Michael Wright. I know Bryce Thompson's coming back as well. And I know he actually is coming back from injury here. Is why I'm saying he's coming back versus is back. He was playing in a couple of games to start out with as well. But like Oklahoma State loses their season opener to Abilene Christian by 5. And honestly, it was a bad game. Like offensively, watching that game was pretty painful. You only scored 59 points against, they're not the worst team in the entire world, but they're Abilene Christian. Like, they're not a household name. And that just is a bummer. Like, that is just one of those where, that Abilene Christian is going to be writing this down. It's like, this is one of their biggest games their entire season. They get to play non-conference. They get to go to Stillwater. and then they win by 5, and they actually show out. And watching that game, I was like, man, they're running offensive sets. They're, doing ball screens. They're all this type of stuff. And LSU looks like we're jacking up threes. Like, I don't know better. I'm sure there's a better way to say it. Looks like it's ISO ball with Bryce Thompson and jacking up threes from a bunch of guys. And at one point, it looked like Oklahoma State could come back in that game. They were out of it the whole time, but that score of only losing by 5 does not indicate the whole story. Then you got Sam Houston, great win. Then 2 losses in Brooklyn that I mentioned already. And then 2 games at home so far as of late, which Oklahoma State has scored in the 90s. So maybe something happened in those couple of days in Brooklyn where we figured it out offensively. Now we're scoring 90 plus. But I can't say that the competition hasn't been part of the reason why as well. You've played New Orleans and Houston Christian at home. So the real test will come this Thursday against Creighton at home. They're a really, really good team. They always are. And they're really, really well coached. I know Boynton loves the defensive side of it, but I just do not see this Oklahoma State team being great in Big 12 play at all. And I see us maybe having a 500 record at the end of the season and then trying to give Boynton one more year and keep saying it's one more year. But as far as it goes, Boynton's a really, really good recruiter who, in my mind, just got his option to coach, just got the chance to coach way too early in his career. Like if Boynton had, for example, if Brad Underwood had stayed, everything would be different. So is what it is. But if Boynton just had another 5 years, another 3 years, you know what? Maybe that would have been just a little bit better for his head coaching. And also, you're a first-time head coach with all this NCAA speculation hanging over your head. It's just not going to be good. Like, I don't know how he's navigating those waters as well as he has, press-wise, in the media, shouting out stuff. But I can see Boynton coming back for one more year after this one because then you're kind of clear from all NCAA regulations and stuff like that and penalties. And then you're also got another top 25 recruiting class coming in. So, like, are you really going to try to fire the coach when he's got a top 25 recruiting class coming in next year? And granted, stuff could change, guys could transfer, etc. But if this team still had Musa Cisse or Caleb Boone or whoever, I'd be giving a much better chance. But like Brandon Garrison as a freshman, Connor Dow as a freshman, some transfers. I don't love Oklahoma State here, and I think this will be a bottom of the Big 12 team that finishes 500 in the Big 12. Probably has one of those crazy like knockoff games in Stillwater where they beat KU or they beat Baylor or they beat OU, whatever it is. But the Big 12 is a gauntlet, and that's the way to say it. Like, there is not an easy game in the Big 12. You can never take a night off. The only team right now that is tied with Oklahoma State at 500 in the Big 12, standings, is West Virginia. And that's because they got a brand new head coach, of course, after Huggins left. And then you got UCF, K-State, Iowa State, Texas. I mean, you're just looking all the way up, and you're like, man, I'm just naming a bunch of teams that have either given OSU trouble in the past, like UCF, Oklahoma State lost to last year in non-conference play. And then also I'm looking at, oh my gosh, K-State, Iowa State, Texas Tech, Texas, KU. Like, I just keep naming teams where I'm like, they're not an easy team to play. And then also you got the new Big 12 too. So now you got to go play Houston. Oh, cool. Great. That's going to be an easy one. And then, of course, the Big 12 is only getting better in basketball year over year, with next year having a bunch of these, Arizona, Colorado, and a bunch of others. I mean, Utah and Arizona State hopefully balances out a little bit, but it's not gonna be balancing out that much. They're still Power 5 schools who are going to bring in really good recruits and have history, of having great guys get drafted from their schools. I mean, Arizona State is not it's not a nobody in college basketball. They had James Harden. Like they're not just horrible in college basketball. They're not a doormat for any reason at all. So this is a league that's only getting tougher. So I think hats off to OU, because I think they will finish, like you said, kind of middle of the pack. I don't know a lot of them as like household guys' names. Big 12 standings, right now they're fourth. And preseason, as KU is picked to finish number 1 overall, and OU's picked to finish 12th, but that's preseason. That has not played out like that so far.
No. Here's the thing. Big 12 is, basketball-wise, Big 12 is the conference. If you think about SEC, you usually have Arkansas or Alabama who are, ranked in the high teens. You don't have a lot of the SEC Power Five conference, mega houses in basketball, because that's more of your West Coast and East Coast type things. So I'm just Big 12 is a powerhouse in the community, because you have Baylor, who's made it to Final Fours consistently throughout the years. You've had Texas, who was good last year, who made it to the Elite Eight. Kansas consistently winning Big 12 over and over again. Everybody talks about the Jayhawks basketball. They're known for basketball, just like Kentucky. All I'm saying is Big 12, and having OU leave Big 12, I hope it does not ruin, recruiting. As good as, you think about it, you have all these great teams. Iowa State's always good in basketball for some reason. They're always high in the rank. West Virginia used to be good before the coach, this year leaves. But I just hate to see OU leave a really good conference when we're just now getting good at basketball again.
When have we not been good would be my thing. I mean, that is just kind of, I get it. KU has been like the powerhouse, and that's who I would pick when in doubt to win the Big 12. But Houston is so good every single year. They have Kelvin Sampson. They are just a really well-coached team, and they're the team where overall I go, you know what, out of everyone, I think I like those guys a lot. In the Big 12, if there's a dark horse, when I was thinking the outline, I was like, okay, dark horse Big 12 team, who could come out of nowhere and kind of win the Big 12. Well, no one's going to really come out of nowhere, because every team's such a good powerhouse type of team. The teams that would come out of nowhere would literally be the Oklahoma States, the Cincinnatis, the BYUs, the UCFs. But besides that, that's really because all these teams are not picked to do anything that well. I mean, West Virginia, if they won the Big 12, would I be shocked? Not necessarily. Like, I think we got a bunch of great players, and if Huggins had really kept his mouth shut and also, just been smarter, then I think he'd still be the head coach there, and we'd be looking at that game like, oh my gosh, can't believe that's going to happen either. So, I mean, Texas picked to finish third in the Big 12, Baylor fourth, TCU fifth, K-State sixth, and then it drops off a little bit. But like you said, Iowa State, they're somehow always good. I always know them for being really, really good as well too. So it's just it's really tough. Excuse me, really tough.
Yeah, like I said, I love Big 12 basketball. I've been a fan of it since Buddy Hield. When we won the Big 12, no, we lost to a buzzer. Buddy Hield hit the buzzer beater, but he was like, I believe a few milliseconds off or something at half court. But all I'm saying, I've loved watching Big 12 basketball. And there's always some Big 12 that's like out of nowhere, like, oh, they're good this year. Like I think 2 years ago, or was it 3 years ago, it was TCU and Baylor in Kansas. Now it's Houston, because they're here in Big 12. Now it's Houston, Kansas, and probably Baylor again, because they're defensive minded and they're pretty good. But if we're talking dark horses, I would like to see TCU kind of show up. They haven't, they've been middle of the pack most years. So like them being undefeated, I would like to see them, steal some games from like I don't know, Kansas or Houston, just to give OU a chance to be high in their ratings. That's just how I feel.
Yeah, I remember looking at Oklahoma State basketball earlier this offseason and going, okay, like, what's the deal? What's the plan, right? Like, of these guys, well, 247 Sports is Oklahoma State at the top 10 in the nation recruiting class. Great. It's like top 10, but it also could be, top 20 if you're moving like 4 points off the rating system. So it's not that, like, it's not number one is what I'm saying. It's not, it's not, Oklahoma State does not have a 5-star on the roster, from the commits. That Bryce Thompson was a 5-star, so I can't say that. But the commits, I'm like, oh, okay, you know what? Like, this team could be pretty darn good. They've got Eric Daly, 4-star, Braden Garrison, 4-star, Justin McBride, 4-star, Jaron Keller, 3-star, and Connor Dow, 3-star. Like, this could be a pretty darn good team. And the guys I'm mentioning here are all, got a couple power forward, small forward, combo guard, and a center. Like, all these guys you could just have all this 5 run out and play immediately from how they fit position-wise. But unfortunately, it just hasn't worked out that way. And when you're losing games like the way you are, I'm not trying to say, hey, the sky's falling. Oh my gosh, Oklahoma State basketball's on the fringes, because that's just not it. But some of these guys have got to just show out a little bit, because Javon Small is the guy's name that I know right now, and he's a transfer from ECU. And then you've got Mike Marsh, who plays incredibly well. But Isaiah Miranda was a previous almost 5-star transfer from NC State, and so far, I don't know him. He's not a guy where I go, oh my gosh, that guy's going to develop into be pretty darn good or whatever. It just has not worked out that way whatsoever. So I'm worried about this Oklahoma State season, to say the least. I think that's probably the best way to say it, because I like Boynton so much. He says all the right things in every single press conference, handles himself incredibly well. But at some point, if you're not putting the wins on the board, something's got to happen. Something's got to change. And yeah, it's just not been it. I could talk about Oklahoma State basketball for forever. And then honestly, the rest of the Big 12 is usually a wait and see. For me, it's usually, okay, once you get the Big 12 play, get 5 games in, then I think it kind of, sometimes it still is really murky and hard to tell. But for right now, I'm kind of with you. Okay, I can see Iowa State winning the Big 12. If it's dark horse. I don't know why they couldn't. They're a really well-coached team. They play pretty darn good defense, and they almost never lose at home. Oklahoma State, I remember when Oklahoma State beat them at home a couple years ago, it was oh my gosh, can't believe Oklahoma State beat them at home and held them to 39. It was it was just a new historic thing. Mm-hmm. And that all goes to show you, they don't really lose at home that much. And honestly, they're one of the teams I think is a dark horse, but kind of only because there's just, it's not that top heavy in the Big 12. You've got Houston, KU, Baylor, and then I almost want to keep going on the list. I don't want to stop there at just 3, because there's so many good teams. Right. K-State last year made a deep March Madness run, but Houston did too. And, and Baylor won the national championship in the past 5 years. KU's got to, KU has, what is it? The Michigan transfer, Hunter, what's his last name? You know what I'm talking about? They always bring in guys every single year. Yeah. And there's so much to me that just wants to say, oh, you know what? We'll get them next year, but it's tough. It really is. So maybe I don't like looking into 2024 when I'm still haven't started Big 12 play, but overall next year right now, Oklahoma State has 1 guy signed. He's a 3-star. It's Jeremiah Johnson. And that's really all I can go off of. And then who knows who's going to transfer? Who knows who's going to play and just do whatever? It's just such a crapshoot there. So I don't know. It's hard for me to know who's going to be great and who's not going to be overall. Brandon Garrison is the 6th best recruit of Oklahoma State all time, and so far he's on a team that's 3-3. I'm not going to credit this to him. He's a true freshman playing a lot of minutes, but yeah, he's the 6th best recruit Oklahoma State's had all the time. He's a 4-star, 6'11" center, which seems like a guy who we have needed for forever. But yet he's just not doing it overall. So yeah, I think that's kind of it. Yeah. All right. Well, last thing here, but before we end it out, because I think the last podcast we did where I was asking kind of which players would you rather play with and kind of do the whole, kind of fun, would be Chet or Wemby or, who would it be, back and forth, all type of stuff here. I do have one for you here, but it's going to bring it back to football. You can be on you can be coached by any of the coaches in college football right now, except for your own team's head coach. So, can't say Brent Venables. I can't say Mike Gundy. Okay. Who would you like to play for out of college football here the most?
Oh, that's actually a really good question. I would probably want to play under Kirby Smart.
Yeah.
Yeah. I say that, then I think Nick Saban, because Nick Saban had Kirby Smart on his coaching staff for a long time. I think if I wanted to go to the league and I had that chance, I would want to play under Nick Saban, thinking about it. Because I think he gets his guys the most ready for NFL.
See, for me, I'm thinking about this very, very, very niche scenario here. If I'm playing college football, I'm a quarterback in my mind. I'm not playing another position. And at that point,
see, I was thinking like wide receiver, running back,
oh yeah,
kind of like linebacker situation.
for
Okay, I
for
got
you or for me?
Yeah, for me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I think yeah.
Yeah, okay, I got you.
I think for me, then it has to be Lincoln Riley. Like his track record, his the amount of guys he put in the league. But this year, I think I switched up and say Dan Lanning from Morgan. Just because Bo Nix, like when that transfer happened, I literally thought to myself, oh, well, that's a fun story. We'll see when he flames out. And instead, back-to-back years, Bo Nix has been the Heisman contender, Heisman race. And last year, he wasn't talked about all the way to the end because honestly got injured down the stretch. And this year, we could see him winning the Heisman. And he's just revitalized the guy's whole career. I'm not saying that I'd want to play for a guy where, I'd have a bad start to career then transfer to him. But you know what? If he's able to make Bo Nix look that good, then heck, maybe he could make me look a little bit better than I am too. Kind of coach him up a little bit there in the transfer portal.
And as a quarterback, you would want to go play for Lincoln Riley, 100%. Yeah, that's why you got Caleb Williams, because you have, an offensive scheme like Lincoln Riley's, you're going to put up numbers. So, yeah, it's just unfortunate that his defense has never panned out to the eliteness of his offense.
Yeah, the one other thing that I would get off of my soapbox for regarding college football, and I'll probably save it for next week here just because we're a little bit long now on this one, is the Oklahoma State transfer portal guys, where everyone I know was like, oh my gosh, we lost that guy and that guy and that guy and that guy, and like, holy cow, what's the season going to look like? Heck, if Spencer Sanders stays, this could be an undefeated team. I no doubt in my mind. If we're 9-3 right now with playing weird quarterback systems, start out the season where there's no doubt in my mind. Spencer Sanders just, plays for Oklahoma State. We're undefeated. But then I kind of also think about Sanders was injured. Like down the stretch, you asked me before we started, where do I rank like Shane Illingworth? Well, Shane Illingworth only played because Sanders was injured. I don't think Illingworth ever sees the field unless Sanders is injured. And then he transfers and nothing at Nevada. Yeah, we haven't heard from him again, even though I was super high on the guy on several podcasts. And then, John Paul Richardson, going to transfer into TCU. Cool, man. Have fun. Stephon Johnson transferring to Houston. Cool. Yeah, same thing. Cool, man. Have fun. None of these guys are transferring away where I'm like, oh my gosh, how will we survive after this? Caleb Etienne transfers to BYU. Guess who we just beat? And honestly, that guy wasn't starting. So whatever. Stephon Johnson may not have started on this year. Some of these guys who at wide receiver for Oklahoma State might have looked around and went, am I going to for sure start here if I come back? There's only one spot to have kind of a slot wide receiver for Oklahoma State, and Brennan Presley is definitely that guy. And John Paul Richardson, if you're splitting snaps with Brennan Presley, what are you doing? You kind of got to look around and be like, oh man, you know what? Yeah, and that's just because, John Paul Richardson made some of the greatest catches I've seen in quite some time at Oklahoma State, where it just seemed like he would not be able to pull that in. The ball would fit through a window you just didn't think it could fit through in the first place, and all of a sudden, it didn't go all the way through the window. It just stopped right at him. He brought it in. So for me, it's like, oh my gosh. But then, he got I think it's Dominique Richardson or somebody transferred to Baylor from Oklahoma State, where I'm like, all right, that didn't ring a bell.
Ford to OU.
Yeah. Trace Ford to OU. Mason Cobb to USC, which is how I got off on this whole tangent talking about USC in the first place with their defense. Mason Cobb, that USC defense, I thought if anything happened this offseason, if I had to make a surefire bet, I would have planted my flag for sure on USC will have a better defense this year than they did last year. Man. And they might by some numbers, but they're definitely not going back to the college football playoff scenarios. Caleb Williams is not one of the guys we talked about in the Heisman so far because his whole team's really let him down. And he might develop to be the next best quarterback we've ever seen. He might be the best in the entire world, but man, his defense is just not helping him out at all. I think USC beat Colorado, but barely. There's just, Colorado, they're Colorado, I guess. We'll see how they are next year.
They've won, 4 games. You got to give,
I'll give Dillon a lot of credit, but they're not.
New roster, new, it's Power 5 now. You're bigger, harder schools, and, is different, and he's done, decent. I haven't felt like he's, of course he didn't go undefeated like a lot of people at the beginning of the season thought he would, and like oh, that USC loss is because USC is going to be a top ranked team, just to find out they're not. I'm just saying, I think Dillon did his job, and I expect him to get better next year.
I do too. I really hope Dillon gets both of his sons to come back for another year. I know the son on defense, I think Shiloh, should come back no matter what. But then Sanders, like, he technically, I think, could leave after this year.
Yeah, he could go to.
And man, I think that should be the dumbest thing ever. Like, this is a loaded quarterback talent class. You've got several quarterbacks we've named. You also got Drake May, who I haven't even said his name yet. We'd love to do a whole NFL, preview of the draft because that one will be fun. But I don't know, Jay, you got any final shout outs? Fingers crossed we can play some ball tomorrow night.
Shout out to the SEC new two incomers, probably a SEC winner of the Big 12 championship. Shout out to the Big 12 for, hurting my feelings this year with the tiebreaker stuff. But yeah, that's about it.
The tiebreaker stuff. What are you getting at here?
The K-State, OSU, and OU.
Yeah, shout out for a Big 12 having such a confusing scenario that no one really understands it, even the biggest fans do on a podcast about it don't really get it. So shout out to them for that one, for sure. I'd say also shout out because basically here, shout out to college football playoffs and the scheduling, because we get to Friday night, we get to see the biggest college football playoff indicator game of the whole schedule, I got to say, in Oregon and Washington Friday night, and then get to see that Louisville, Florida State game the next day. But I'll tell you what, my eyes will be glued. 11 a.m. kickoff to see Oklahoma State with a 15% chance in my mind go out there and then beat Texas, hopefully. So why couldn't it happen? We beat them 9 out of the last 13 years. In Texas, send them away, send them packing. I mean, this isn't an OU diss, so I'll leave it there. All right, thanks for everyone for listening. Please follow at the CGA Tour on Twitter and Instagram for more, and we'll catch you guys again soon.